West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Now Assistant Speaker of the House, Democratic Congresswoman Catherine Clark of Massachusetts. Congresswoman, it's great to have you with us this morning. You were inside those meetings as well. Do you share some of the optimism we heard there from Congresswoman Jayapal, and we're hearing from others about the future and the fate of this big package?
I certainly do. I can tell you that our meetings yesterday showed that there is momentum on our side and that these negotiations are making real progress. And what gave me such optimism about yesterday is that the American people were sitting right there with us in the Oval Office. Their concerns that we are hearing about the economy, will they have a role in it? About addressing climate change with the urgency that we need, and having this through line of equity through all of these negotiations, so that the policies that we enact in the final negotiation, in the final bill, are ones that truly meet the needs of and the great challenges the American people are facing with great progress.
Congressman, we heard a few weeks ago from some members of the Progressive Caucus that it's $3.5 trillion or bust, and now we're talking about 1.5, 1.75, 1.9 trillion, something like that, and still hearing optimism from you and many others. So what has changed there, and can you live with some of these cuts we're hearing about, like losing tuition-free community college and making the child tax credit extended perhaps for only 1 year?
You know, this is a negotiation, and we don't have final numbers yet, but I can tell you that the priorities that we care about making sure families can find childcare and home care for their elders, about making sure that we are reducing the costs of health care in this country, about addressing climate change as we look at a summer of fires and drought and hurricanes, that those priorities are shared, and they are the ones that we share with the American people. This entire Build Back Better agenda was built from conversations that Joe Biden had across this country, and that's why I'm optimistic that the D in Democrat is going to be for deliver.
So, Congresswoman, take us inside the Oval Office, if you will. You said you were representing the American people inside the Oval Office. Take us inside those negotiations, the conversations with President Biden and the other members of Congress, your colleagues. What's making the difference? How are Democrats seeming to finally be moving forward together? What happened inside there?
You know, I think what's happened is, I can tell you my experience, and it is one that is shared. It's being home. and listening to our constituents, hearing those stories from families. Just this weekend, I met a man who told me about his wife had died in childbirth of a stroke and the difference that the child tax credit made in his life. He couldn't really believe that this sort of aid was coming his way to help him pay those basic bills for his young toddler daughter. Those stories are repeated every single day about a family I met when I was home that had to make a choice between buying a house or being able to afford childcare as a teacher and a writer. Two good jobs, but still not able to make it. And they had to move in with their family in order to have the childcare that they needed. These are the choices, these are the challenges and barriers that American families are facing. And what we are seeing in this negotiation is that they finally have a voice at the table here. And I think it's important to remember that every single Democrat is at this negotiating table, fighting for American families, fighting for a more equitable and inclusive economy. Right. And you know who's missing? Every single Republican.
All right. Who's not missing is Massachusetts' own tired, beaten, and battered Mike Barnacle. He has a question for you.
Was not a good night for the Sox.
But we have tonight.
That's
it's
right.
like working in Congress. You go back at it again the next day. But most Americans are familiar with the litany of stories and problems and issues that you just laid out so effectively. My question to you is, among the split between the progressives and the moderates in the House, how many of them really focus on one single fact? There's a Democratic president in the White House. You have the House of Representatives, you have the United States Senate, but you have a Democratic president in the White House somewhat in peril because of the split in the Democratic Party, not only in the House, but in the Senate. What about the issue of achievement, accomplishment, passing a bill? When is that going to override all of the ideological differences that we've followed now for months?
I would say that we are there because what unites Democrats are these policies, are the idea that we really do need to build back better. Let's just look at the September job numbers and what they said about women in this economy at a 33-year low in participation in the workforce. That's why Joe Biden, when he put this together, emphasized childcare, emphasized paid leave and home care, because we know those are barriers to participation. And we know that it has so much to do with gender equity, and women are a key piece of our economy, and we have to make sure those pieces are there. So there is lots of talk about this divide between moderates and progressives, but it's not what I see. In my conversations throughout our caucus, I find a commitment to making sure that we meet this moment for American families. And that's why I am optimistic that this is going to come together, because we know from the stories at home that it is so critical that we actually deliver this moment with the urgency of now.
It is Wednesday, the 20th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? And I gotta tell you, it doesn't stop at the priests, because there's a lot of, evangelical Protestants out there that are quite bothersome as well, as we know. Well, how are you? It's Wednesday. That means we're in the middle of the week. I don't know how that works with 7 days, but here we are. And we are here. Indeed. Well, it's raining where I'm at, which is good in the sense that, I got to tell you, we have some deep-rooted trees in this area that really need some water. And it's good that they're getting it. Fall is in pretty much full shade, full color. Yeah, we'll call it full color because there are some electric, vibrant reds out there. And it's quite shocking. Yes. Well, you know, birth renewal, that whole thing. Hey, looks like Steve Bannon is getting a criminal referral for ignoring the subpoena. They, of course, are going to vote in the full House, and we pretty much know where that vote will go. The question is, and a lot of people just presume, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Once it gets to the DOJ, they'll do what they do. Yeah, that's the problem. They'll do what they do. And what they do is always present a secret OLC memo. They never present it. They just say, well, I got this secret OLC memo right here in my back pocket that says you can't subpoena or indict anyone who took part in a coup to overthrow the United States of America if they happen to be the previous president who doesn't want to give up power. And the only way that he can keep that from happening, giving up the power, is to have a violent insurrection with the hopes of killing the vice president, the Speaker of the House, and anybody else they can lay their hands on. All right. Now, this is, in the same time frame that some Black Lives Matter protesters have been charged with federal terrorism charges for pounding, not destroying, not breaking windows, just pounding with their open hands on a New York Police Department cop car that had been abandoned. But apparently, can't go after the planners. The ones who were actually watching the insurrection unfold, and they were in a tent outside the White House watching it on TV. I remember the excuse at the time, oh, no, we didn't know any. We just had the TV on to some channels. No, you look at it, and they've got closed-circuit TV feeds. Look, that was Command Central. You had Kimberly Guilfoyle dancing her little weird dance. Boy, no wonder Gavin said, yeah, I'm going to get rid of this lady. And she went. Ah, boy, the world we live in. So, it's a little concerning. I would like the Justice Department to act with a little bit more force. On the other hand, we must not forget that Merrick Garland was instrumental because there was a lot of pushback about continuing the terrorism charges against McVeigh. But he was able to get that, and there was a death sentence involved there. My concern is that Merrick Garland looks at those two instances, that being the blowing up of the McMurrow building in Oklahoma City with little kids inside, and the insurrection on January 6th, the difference being is that, the people who blew up the building were really just a small cell of people. Sure, they shared an ideology, that was, spanned across the country, but for the most part, the numbers were small, and there wasn't true coordination across, these various groups. It was just that cell that McVeigh had. Whereas the insurrection on January 6th pretty much encompasses county sheriffs in every state of the union, cops on the beat, cops here and there, military, military types, complete military command. So I can see where he would be a bit concerned that if you, pretty much arrested all those people, the society will collapse? Is that the concern? No. I think society would be enhanced, not made detrimental to the cause of freedom and the American way. Life, liberty, freedom, and the American way. No. All those cops up in Seattle carrying their boots up the steps of City Hall because they're not going to do those vaccines. You can't mandate that vaccine to me. After they've already been vaccinated for a slew of diseases that really pretty much decimated the world population for thousands of years. We finally got the science to be able to keep these bugs at bay. And I don't know. Maybe there's some parasite that got into a certain type of person who thinks that it's good to be on the side of the bugs. Now, I'm not discriminating against bugs, but I'm talking about, this virus. It's a bug. Oh, I know I'm not supposed to dehumanize the virus by calling it a bug, Facebook, but I'm doing it anyway. They're bugs. So we finally get the science to keep it at bay, and now people are siding with the virus. I guess that, if you're addicted to a drug like kick the liberal, kick the hippie, if your addiction is so strong that you would actually risk death to get the drug and to take the drug, I think that you're addicted. I think you need some help. Of course, have you ever tried to convince an addict that they need help? You know what the response is? Yeah. They'll be flying the U.S. flag, tinted black, by the way, because that means they're going to kill their liberal neighbors, Jews, and anybody else that's in their way. That's what that flag means. On their ISIS trucks and drive around city centers trying to antagonize people. And then blame you for the violence that will ensue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw an article where a think tank, quote, think tank that is advocating for the coup has put out a plan for these Oathkeeper sheriffs to secede, to lead the secession. If these entities are actively promoting a civil war, I thought, silly me if I'm mistaken, but I actually thought there were laws against that, especially when you get law enforcement involved to be active participants in the overthrow of a duly elected government because they didn't like the outcome, because we're all just a bunch of socialists and they got to save us from us. Even got Marco Rubio out there talking about the child tax credit and parental leave as being socialism. Rubio, shut the F up. Okay? I don't know what it is about your arch conservatism because of Fidel. But you need to lighten up. You're in America now. Okay, what you are arguing against are Eisenhower policies. That's not communism. I know the Birchers back in the day called Dwight a commie. How dare he do the interstate highway system? That's socialism. They called the interstate highway system socialism. You know exactly where their heads are at. And I gotta admit, we've allowed them to get away with what they've been getting away with, and now look where we are. We let the incorrigible delinquent get away with it, and sending him to continuation high school only makes it worse. Tough love? I don't know. They don't like getting the tough love, but they sure like giving it. With the emphasis on tough, which they love to do. All right, enough of that meandering. Can you tell I'm a bit peeved? I am indeed. So let's get into the ordered part, the curated part of our salon here that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. At the top, that was a U.S. Congressman, the Vice Speaker of the House, said there is momentum on our side. And I think our side means our side. In the spending bill negotiations that it looks like Manchin, Sinema, and the whole of the GOP want to blow up. On the rest of the menu, the Washington State Attorney General filed 2 criminal charges against a county sheriff stemming from his confrontation with a black newspaper carrier. What's that guy out there doing delivering papers in the dark? The Supreme Court won't block vaccine mandates for Maine healthcare workers, even minor ones. See what I did there? And, rebuffing a conservative group's argument, a federal judge ruled the University of North Carolina can continue to consider race as a factor in its undergraduate admissions. Affirmative action rears its critical race theory head once again. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the South African drug regulator, citing unanswered safety concerns, rejected the Russian-made coronavirus vaccine, Sputnik V, or is it 5? And the Taliban agreed to the first polio vaccination effort across Afghanistan since 2018. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would help us tremendously. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and if you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we are able to utilize those dollars and stretch them beyond compare, utilizing them in a specific and particular way. And what is that? Well, it's to pay our bills. And those bills keep rising, and that's why we have to keep asking for funds, because this little powerhouse of resistance wouldn't exist if we were not getting help from you, because you are our biggest contributor, and we thank you for that. So we've been doing this for 10 years, and we're not a media empire. Some people thought that they could possibly turn it all into, I don't know, money-making operation. Well, we had some more important things to attend to, and that's preventing the Nazi takeover of the United States of America, or something Nazi-like. Sure feels like Nazism. Anyway, all kidding aside, even though it's gallows humor, which always has a bit of truth to it now, doesn't it? We thank you for your generosity, and it is true, the bills keep going up, let alone the planned obsolescence on the machinery and software. I thought we had turned that around back in the days when we all thought Ralph Nader was a pretty good guy. Anyway, once again, I want to thank you for your generosity. We will continue because, well, it's our civic duty, and we thank you for letting us fulfill our civic duty. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that and a hell of a lot more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary, incidentally, on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And then get that linked up on social media platforms like Twitter and others that are going to change their names now, apparently, because they don't want us to know that they've, well, pretty much been a criminal data mining operation. Yep. Oh, did you hear also, just since we're talking about Zuckerberg, you know we were, apparently a state attorney general is suing Facebook and Zuckerberg personally for being personally involved in the 2016 election, teaming up with Cambridge Analytica and, I don't know, gaming the system to the benefit of a hostile foreign power who then installed Donald Trump. Okay. That's why Zuckerberg wants to change their name. All criminal enterprises want to rebrand after they've been caught. Really. Okay. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And if you would, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we have the chef's table coming up, towards the end for the amuse-bouche. Staff at the Associated Press bring us this first offering. The Washington State Attorney General yesterday, Tuesday, filed 2 misdemeanor criminal charges against a county sheriff stemming from his confrontation with a black newspaper carrier in January. Pierce County Sheriff Ed Troyer faces 1 count of false reporting and 1 count of making a false statement to a civil servant for claiming to an emergency dispatcher that the carrier, Cedric Altheimer, had threatened to kill him. The charges were filed in Pierce County District Court by Attorney General Bob Ferguson. Troyer, who has denied wrongdoing, criticized the decision. Of course he did. I have never had a sustained or founded complaint in 37 years, he told the Seattle Times. I've never had a complaint of racial bias, use of force, or sexual discrimination even filed. Oh, really? So that means you've never done it. What's the first thing that they tell you in traffic court? If you haven't been to traffic court, I'll tell you. The first thing they tell you in traffic court is, how many times did you do what you were doing and got away with until you're finally caught, and now that's why you're here? Mm-hmm. Okay. 37 years he was getting away with it, apparently. Altheimer, age 24, was driving on his regular delivery route on January 27th when Troyer noticed the vehicle, got out of bed, and began following it in his unmarked personal SUV. Troyer said he believed it might have been someone stealing delivery packages off porches. I got to tell you, that's the meth addicts, and in the Northwest, the meth addicts predominantly are white. Let's just put it that way. The two wound up in a 2 a.m. standoff in which Troyer called an emergency dispatcher saying the newspaper carrier had threatened to kill him. The call from the county's top law enforcement officer prompted a large response with more than 40, that's 40 units from various agencies rushing toward the scene. Oh, wow. A 24-year-old black newspaper carrier, and you got 40 cop cars coming at you, and I think that some of them might have a couple of cops in it. Troyer repeatedly told dispatchers Altheimer threatened to kill me. Altheimer denied making any threats and said Troyer did not identify himself as a law enforcement officer. In a statement to a responding officer, Troyer acknowledged that Altheimer did not threaten him, the Attorney General office wrote, in a probable cause statement. Now, Troyer is a 35-year veteran of the Pierce County Sheriff's Department and served for years as the agency's public face and media spokesperson before being elected sheriff in 2020, November of 2020. Pierce County has more than 900,000 residents and is Washington's second most populous county. You know, if it was me, I would say they were almost 1 million, but hey, that's me. Now, if convicted, the standard sentencing range for the misdemeanor sentences is up to 364 days in jail and up to a $5,000 fine. Now, once again, couldn't they just say almost a year instead of 364 days? Attorneys representing Altheimer filed a tort claim against Pierce County in June, alleging that Troyer's actions amounted to racial profiling, false arrest, and unnecessary use of force. 40 cop cars. The claim, a precursor to a possible lawsuit, seeks millions of dollars in damages. David Sharp of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The U.S. Supreme Court declined yesterday, Tuesday, to block a vaccine requirement imposed on Maine healthcare workers, the latest defeat for opponents of vaccine mandates. It was the first time the Supreme Court weighed in on a statewide vaccine mandate. It previously rejected challenges of vaccine requirements for New York City teachers and Indiana University staff and students. Justice Stephen Breyer rejected the emergency appeal, but left the door open to try again as the clock ticks on Maine's mandate. The state will begin enforcing it on October 29th. The Maine vaccine requirement that was put in place by Democratic Governor Janet Mills requires hospital and nursing home workers to get vaccinated or risk losing their jobs. Opponents tried to block the mandate, but a federal judge rejected the request on October 13th. The judge said the record indicated regular testing alone was not sufficient to stop the spread of the Delta variant. The decision set off a flurry of emergency appeals to the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals and then the U.S. Supreme Court. A 3-judge panel of the appeals court in Boston quickly dismissed the emergency appeal, but fast-tracked additional arguments. That timetable provides enough time for another ruling before enforcement of the vaccine mandate begins at the end of next week. It sounds like they're court shopping now, doesn't it? Matt Staver, founder and chair of the Liberty Council. Yeah, we know which side of the aisle that guy is. Which challenged the vaccine mandate, said the Supreme Court is ready to consider the case if we do not get relief from the appeals court in the coming days. The Maine Attorney General's office declined to comment. The Liberty Council, which filed the lawsuit in federal court in Maine in August, claimed to be representing more than 2,000 healthcare workers who do not want to be forced to be vaccinated. Dozens of healthcare workers have opted to quit, and Central Maine Medical Center in Lewiston already curtailed some admissions because of a acute shortage of nurses, but most healthcare workers have complied. State agencies vowed to work with hospitals and nursing homes individually to address the issues. I should say that even though we've had quite raucous protests against vaccine mandates at the hospital, the largest hospital in the region where my sister works as a registered nurse, primarily specializing in respiratory therapy. You know what that means. Anyway, there have been gauntlets that one has to walk through to get to ER. And even though these protests have been occurring not by, once again, I should reiterate, not by the healthcare workers at the hospital, but by AstroTurf groups bust in, we get a report now that over 99% of the staff at the hospital have been vaccinated. And pretty much those 99% plus are saying, hey, those idiots that don't want to get vaccinated, we don't want them to work here anyway. And to me, that is a heartening story. Coleman and Jonathan Drew bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and I should mention that they are from the Associated Press. A federal judge has ruled that North Carolina's flagship public university can continue to consider race as a factor in its undergraduate admissions, rebuffing a conservative group's argument that affirmative action disadvantages white and Asian students. U.S. District Judge Loretta Biggs ruled late Monday that the University of North Carolina has shown that it has a compelling reason to pursue a diverse student body and has demonstrated that measurable benefits come from that goal. In sum, the court concludes that UNC has met its burden in demonstrating that it has a genuine and compelling interest in achieving the educational benefits of diversity, Biggs wrote. Students for Fair Admissions sued UNC in 2014, arguing that using race and ethnicity as a factor in college admissions violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution and federal civil rights law. Oh, they're discriminating against white people. Wait a second. We also recruited some Asians to make it look like it's not all about white people. Yeah, it's all about white people. The group contended that UNC had gone too far in using race as a factor in admissions and had thus intentionally discriminated against certain of its members on the basis of their race, color, or ethnicity. In other words, white people. The group's president, Edward Blum, told the AP in an interview yesterday, Tuesday, that it would appeal by day's end to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. His group already appealed a denial in a similar lawsuit against Harvard. Blum said he hopes both cases get bundled together so that the U.S. Supreme Court rules simultaneously on private and public universities. These guys have no care for the United States of America. The Supreme Court in June asked the Justice Department to weigh in on Blum's Harvard lawsuit, which was supported by Donald Trump's administration. Trump's Justice Department also challenged Yale University's admission practices in a suit President Joe Biden's administration dropped earlier this year. UNC countered in court that its admission practices are legally and constitutionally permissible, and that race-neutral alternatives would not enable it to achieve its diversity goals. Of roughly 20,000 undergraduate UNC students this fall of 2021 semester, approximately 56% are white, 13% Asian, about 10% Hispanic, and around 8.5% black, the university said. So much discrimination against white people, I know. This decision makes clear that the university's holistic admissions approach is lawful, said an email statement from Beth Keith, a spokesperson for the university. We evaluate each student in a deliberate and thoughtful way, appreciating individual strengths, talents, and contributions to a vibrant campus community where students from all backgrounds can excel and thrive. Judge Biggs wrote that she applied the U.S. Supreme Court's University of Texas precedent, which established that schools may consider race in admissions in ways narrowly tailored to promote diversity. She noted that UNC offered principled and reasoned explanations supported by research for its pursuit of a diverse student body, citing a 2005 report by a UNC task force that its academic goals depend on a, quote, critical mass, end quote, of students from underrepresented groups. The university has presented substantial evidence demonstrating its good faith in pursuing the educational benefits that flow from diversity, the judge concluded. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law represented a racially diverse group of students who intervened in the case, demanding that the university to even more support minorities. Its statement said, considering race in admissions helps ensure that talented applicants from historically marginalized groups are not overlooked. Indeed. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, the end of an era. Some more august reviewer than me may have coined the term Bondverse already, but I'll claim it until I know better. In Bondverse, we kind of know what we're in for. There'll be a love interest with an integral connection to the plot, a villain with an apocalyptic scheme in his own private lair, and a facial deformity, check and check in No Time to Die, as well as an opulent and usually tropical background for the most extreme stunts a Bond movie budget can afford. And of course, there are the bureaucrats in London, which in Bondverse is still the defense hub of Western civilization. We have all this here, and we'd hate it if we didn't. We also have a continuation of blistering pre-credit scenes which set up the action and reference prior Bond adventures. In this one, we meet Madeline, Léa Seydoux again, 5 years prior to the story here and then in it. Plus, we get some backstory on her. This time out, there really is chemistry between her and Daniel Craig's Bond, which needed to be stepped up to make the emotional conclusion work. God knows how much Christoph Waltz got for his minutes of screen time as Blofeld strapped to a chair, but we can say the evil torch is passed to Rami Malek's Lucifer Safin. And yes, the character's first name sounds like Lucifer, but his evil intentions are only partially sustained by Malek's performance. We do meet some new faces, obliquely addressing a recent controversy over whether a future Bond could be black. We're introduced to Nomi, Lashana Lynch, as the new 007, since technically Bond is retired here. Like the agent in 24 previous outings, No Time to Die fulfills its mission to Bondverse, bringing the Craig era to a close, and few fans will want to miss it. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
He's running first, second, third. He stopped between third and home. What the heck?
Ooh, that's not the time to stop. And now's not the time to stop wearing a mask. Vaccines are a game changer. But the game's not over. Mask up until you're vaccinated. Let's finish strong. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/masks. A message by CDC and the Ad Council.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Question: what does a packet of M&Ms and your local veterinarian have in common? Answer: both are owned by Mars, Inc., the global candy monopolist. Since the 1980s, we've seen massive consolidations in industry after industry, from airlines to newspapers, the internet to candy. These monopolists run roughshod over consumers, workers, communities, suppliers, and our nation's commitment to the common good. And now the corporate attitude seems to be, what the hell, why not let monopolization go to the dogs? This change has been led by private equity groups. They are corporate takeover sharks that borrow billions of dollars to buy out, plunder, then sell off the remnants of established businesses. They target enterprises that can be grabbed on the cheap but have assets like a loyal customer base. Then the sharks raise prices on those customers while cutting staff and quality of service. This has been happening to thousands of local vet practices and hospitals, which have quietly been plucked by Wall Street entities bearing nondescript acronyms like IVC, JAB, KKR, and VCA. At first, locals don't notice the takeover because the corporate outfit not only buys your friendly Dr. Barry Bones vet service, but they also buy the doc's name. As an IVC takeover consultant confided, people like to take their dogs to local vets and not feel like it's a corporate machine. But increasingly, it is. Solo practitioners now must answer to bean counters at headquarters, such as VCA, Veterinary Center of America, which has 1,000 vet practices across the country and is now owned by Mars, Inc. This is Jim Hightower saying one feisty group battling monopolizers is the National Veterinary Professionals Union. Get info at natvup.org. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
The events of January 6th were part of an attempted coup.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
As described in detail in a new book by Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Robert Costa titled Peril, Trump's lawyer, John Eastman, advised Trump that he could remain in power despite the election results and wrote the now famous or infamous memo that laid out for Trump how he could do that. Eastman argued that the vice president has enormous power on how, which, and when electoral votes will be counted, and thus, in effect, the power to decide the election. Eastman argued in part that Pence could delay the certification of the Electoral College votes until certain Trump loyalists in state legislatures could change those states' votes. That was part of the plan. Pence's loyalty to Trump has been on full display throughout the administration, but playing a critical part in a coup, Pence wouldn't do it. But some vice president might. And some state legislatures might well appoint electors who could thwart the will of that state's voters. And the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which governs procedures, has numerous ambiguities, which allows the possibility of political machinations to install the loser as the winner. What we have learned recently is that our democracy is more fragile, less certain than we have thought. As the title of the recent New York Times editorial put it, January 6th was worse than it looked.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. That was the day that one of the great labor leaders in U.S. history, Eugene V. Debs, died in Elmhurst, Illinois. In 1894, Debs gained national attention when his American Railway Union launched a boycott in support of the striking workers of the Pullman Palace Car Company. The strike and the boycott were crushed by federal troops and a federal court. Debs served 6 months in jail for his role in the boycott. Later, Debs would again go to jail for standing up for his beliefs. He was convicted for speaking out against U.S. involvement in World War I. He was among the founders of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, in 1905. He ran as a socialist for President of the United States 5 times, receiving nearly 1 million votes running his campaign from a prison cell in 1920. In 1891, Debs wrote an article for the Locomotive Fireman's magazine titled The Unity of Labor. His words stand as an eloquent case for worker solidarity. Debs wrote, quote, "If working men were united in sympathetic bonds, if a bricklayer could comprehend the fact that he is dependent on the hod carrier, if the locomotive engineer could grasp the fact that he is dependent on the locomotive fireman, the interdependence of labor would at once constitute a bond of union, a chain whose link, forged and fashioned to hold working men in harmonious alliance, would girt them with a defense in every time of trouble and resist invasion, though assailed by all the plutocrats that ever cursed the earth." Debs spent his life trying to bring about this harmonious alliance of working people and standing up for the causes of peace and justice. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Cloudy skies with rain that's been following quite steady overnight. Says a slight chance of a rain shower, though we're having one right now currently, so that's actually a good thing. And highs will only be around 60 degrees today. Partly cloudy this evening with more clouds overnight. A small chance of rain with lows near 45, winds light and variable. And then mostly cloudy in the morning tomorrow, then periods of showers later in the day, bringing about 1/4 of an inch. Winds will be out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we look like we'll be having rain every day for at least the next 10 days, so we'll see how that goes. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have once again increased and now stand at 228,037, and our deceased have gone up by 1 and now stands at 305. Ragweed pollen is considered low right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. Let's hope the rain takes it to the ground. The air quality index for the region is good at 39 parts per million, even though people are burning wood in their fireplaces to keep warm, and who can blame them? And that daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.93 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 61 and partly cloudy. Paris is 68 and cloudy. Rome is 70 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 58 and fair. Kabul is 61 and clear. Hong Kong is 76 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 58 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 62 and fair. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and cloudy. And New York is a pleasant 64 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Maria Chang and Mogomotsi Magome of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The South African drug regulator has rejected the Russian-made coronavirus vaccine Sputnik V, citing some safety concerns the manufacturer was not able to answer. The South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, or SAPRA, said in a statement yesterday, Tuesday, that the request for Sputnik V to be authorized could not be approved at this time, referring to past failed HIV vaccines that used a similar technology. But the regulator added that its review process was continuing and that it was still open to receiving any further safety data from the Russian manufacturer. A late-stage study published in the journal Lancet last year in more than 20,000 participants found the Sputnik V, Sputnik V, I don't know. Someone will tell me, though, I'm sure. Well, they said it was safe and about 91% effective in preventing people from becoming severely ill with COVID-19. Sputnik V uses two types of harmless viruses to carry the spike protein in the body, which then primes the immune system to produce antibodies against COVID-19. Amid widespread vaccine hesitancy in Russia, authorities have struggled to convince people to get vaccinated, and the immunization rate in the country has remained stubbornly low at about 32% despite the availability of Sputnik V. Sputnik V is currently also being considered for authorization by the World Health Organization and the European Medicines Agency. The shot has been given the green light in more than 70 countries. To date, no significant safety problems have been identified.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Raheem Fez of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. UN agencies are gearing up to vaccinate all of Afghanistan's children under the age of 5 against polio for the first time since 2018, after the Taliban agreed to the campaign. For the past 3 years, the Taliban barred UN-organized vaccination teams from doing door-to-door campaigns in parts of Afghanistan under their control, apparently out of suspicion they could be spies for the government or the West. Because of the ban and ongoing fighting, some 3.3 million children over the past 3 years have not been vaccinated. The Taliban's reported agreement now, after becoming the rulers of Afghanistan, appeared aimed at showing they are willing to cooperate with international agencies. The longtime militant insurgent force has been trying to win the world's recognition of its new government and reopen the door for international aid to rescue the crumbling economy. The Taliban leadership did not confirm its agreement, and Taliban officials did not immediately respond to requests for comment. But WHO and the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, said in a statement that they welcomed the decision by the Taliban leadership, supporting the resumption of house-to-house polio vaccinations across the country. Well, that's heartening, isn't it? And that also brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow. right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.